Very good evening to one and all. The title of my talk today is Smart Materials and Sensors. And this is how my talk is organized. I'm going to give a very brief introduction on smart materials with some examples and the properties of the smart materials. Then the main topic, which is on smart nanomaterials. Again, I will show you some examples. I will show you the properties and how they are prepared. And then I will be specifically talking about the applications of the smart nanomaterials in sensors. I'll be talking about cation sensors, defect sensing. It is an NDT, non-destructive way of detecting defects in material. And I will also talk about how these materials can be used as a sensor for sensing temperature, pH, and other physiochemical properties. If time permits, I will also flash a slide showing various other applications of the smart materials in different fields, which I will not be able to cover in this lecture. And the last part will be wrapping up the discussion with a few conclusion statements. So the word smart is very familiar to all of us, mainly because of the smartphones that we use. And we also have smart gadgets, smart lighting, smart cities, and so on. So what are smart materials? Obviously, we'll see many definitions, but this is the one which I prefer to give it to the students, which is materials that respond to a stimulus and change their physiochemical characteristics or functional properties in a significant manner. This is very important, significant way of changing the characteristic properties, because all materials will change their properties, but the changes may not be significant in normal material. But in the case of smart materials, you would be able to see a dramatic change in the characteristic or functional properties when a stimulus is applied to this material. Since these materials are responding to a stimulus, they're also called stimuli responsive materials and also called intelligent or active materials. So that's the definition of a smart material. There are plenty of examples for such materials, but first let me talk about the stimuli and properties of this material. The stimuli can be light, it can be pH, it can be environmental condition like humidity, the ionic conductivity or pH of the solutions, or temperature. It can be electric field, magnetic field, or a stress or electromagnetic. These are the external stimuli you can use to manipulate this smart material. When you subject these materials to this external stimuli, the properties such as transparency of material or the color of the materials can change. The size of the material may change significantly, and the shape of the material can change. The volume or conformation of some materials, because, for example, if you consider the polymers which adopt different conformation, if it is changing with the external stimuli, then again, that polymer is called a stimuli responsive polymer. And in some material, the viscosity or the rheological properties changes. And in some material, it may be the conductivity. It can be electrical or thermal conductivity of the material. So if you look at the materials around us, if you take these sunglasses or the glasses, transition glasses, if you take as an example, when it is exposed to sunlight, it darkens. But when you are indoor, it is transparent. This is a property which you can see changing when it is exposed to sunlight. Similarly, the piezoelectric materials, where you subject to this material to stress, it produces a voltage, or you apply voltage, the material expand and contract. This is the, working principle which is used to produce ultrasound scanning and so many, materials or devices that are used here. The impact, when your car is colliding or there is an impact on your car, the airbag is activated by this sensor, the piezoelectric material, which, produces a voltage and it activates the airbag to open. So that material, again, you can see this material is used in atomic force microscope and piezoelectric pushers, so many applications. It is a material invented way back in 1880. And, a relatively new material is shape memory alloys. You would see that the material is changing its shape when a stimuli, which is temperature, is applied to the materials. In the first case, you can see the material is bending. And the second case, a coiled material is becoming, elongated or straightened when a voltage is applied. This kind of materials called shape memory alloys. Again, they have a variety of engineering applications, including in automobiles, aircraft, and probably future aircraft, the wings and other things. This kind of materials are going to be used. That is what it is expected. So very useful material. I saw one of the speakers will be talking about shape memory alloys. It's an interesting topic to listen to. Then again, chemists are familiar with materials which, the polymeric material, which changes its conformation. For example, in this case, you see that, this particular case, if you see the polymer is adsorbed at an interface where it adopts a mushroom-like conformation. It's the coiled conformation. And in the right side, when you change the pH of this material, you can see the polymers are getting stretched. Elongated conformation is adopted by this polymeric material. So this is called the pH responsive polymer. And here you can see a simulation when the pH is increased, you can see the polymer, the coiled polymer is getting elongated on the surface. And obviously this property is extremely useful for many applications in different fields. And if you take this kind of polymers in solution form, what you see here in the vial, it is a transparent solution becomes, the transmittance through this material is affected heavily when this kind of conformational changes are happening due to temperature is the stimulus in this case. It is called a thermoresponsive polymer. NIPAM is a fine example, and a lot of researchers are using this NIPAM for various applications because it has a temperature around 34 degrees, this kind of transition happens. So it can be used as a thermoresponsive, material, and also for some of the applications where you need to, trigger the system to induce release of drug molecules and so on, where this kind of materials are being used. So you may ask a question, okay, what is new in it? Photochromatic glasses, it is known, and, the piezoelectric material, which is known for centuries. See, yes, it is an old science with a new name. That's the case with, many fields. I have a few examples here. In this case, if you look at the Physical Review of paper, which is published in 1963, see the title. It talks about thermal fluctuations of a single domain particle. So he's talking about the superparamagnetic nanoparticle, which I will be discussing a little later. And you see the first line is sufficiently fine ferromagnetic particles. So the term nano has never been used, and obviously the nanotechnology was not popular at that point of time. So he's talking about particles which are of several tens of nanometer size superparamagnetic particles. So they are now called nanoparticles. Nobody calls the fine ferromagnetic material. And this physical review letters, if you see, it is published in 1972. The title of this paper is Effect of Size and Surface on Specific Heat of Small Lead Particles. How small these lead particles are? They are 2.2 to 3.7 nanometer size particle. And there is a very popular field which, we also have been working in this area for the last 2 decades. It is known as nanofluids. It's the suspension of fine nanomaterials in a solvent. And everybody talks about nanofluids now, but Michael Faraday prepared such colloidal gold and silver particles way back in 1857. Some of these fluids, they are called colloidal suspensions, and these are active, and it is kept optically active, and it is kept in a museum in London. Highly stable colloidal suspensions of gold, which is prepared way back in 1857. So what I'm trying to say is, this kind of fancy terminologies we see, and maybe some of the materials, you are improving the properties, not the kind of piezoelectric materials which were there in 18th or 19th century. Now we have, much better materials. That is essentially because of our understanding the structure property relationship which we study in material science, which gives rise to, a better understanding, and we are able to tailor materials with the superior properties. So today's discussion is about smart nanomaterials. Now you understand what are smart nanomaterials. They are the nanoscale materials exhibiting significant changes in their physiochemical or functional properties when an external stimuli is applied to this nanomaterial. So that's the definition of smart nanomaterials. And I will be talking about 2 such materials. You can see the first one on the left side, which is a black fluid. It's a fluid containing nanomaterials, nanoparticles, fine iron oxide nanoparticles. I will talk about them. And then on the right side, you will see a golden colored solution, which is again an emulsion containing this superparamagnetic nanoparticle. Why they are called smart nanomaterials or nanofluids? It is because with a magnetic field, with a tiny toy magnet, I will show you some animations or movies where you would be able to see how they are changing their properties when they are subjected to an external magnetic field. They change their rheological properties in a significant way, the viscosity and viscoelastic properties. They change their optical properties in a significant manner. So my discussion will be on the applications where the response stimuli optical properties are exploited, and they change the thermal properties in a significant manner, which is exploited in heat transfer applications. We have done a lot of work on thermal properties of nanofluids. I will not be talking about them. And, the microstructures in this kind of suspensions can be modified, and you can create one-dimensional array, 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional crystals in the solutions by using this external stimuli, and they can be self-assembled and form structures or reconfigurable structures. That's the recent terminology which is used. So what is this black fluid that you see in this bottle on top right side of this slide? It's a suspension of nanoscale magnetic material. It can be any nanomaterials. It can be iron oxide, or it can be one of the ferrites, cobalt or manganese or nickel ferrite materials can be used. But they are so tiny, and hence the thermal agitation is sufficient enough to maintain this particle under Brownian motion. the particle size is so small, the thermal energy can keep them suspended in the solution. That is what you see here. You know, it is like a solute molecule. It defies gravity. The particles are not falling down because the size of the particles are extremely fine. Again, this is not something new. This fluid was invented way back in 1964 by an engineer in NASA called Steve Popple. And his idea was to create a liquid rocket fuel that could be drawn towards a pump inlet in the gravity-free environment using a magnetic field. This was the idea. Of course, it has not been used in rocket fuel because of changes in technology and other things. But this fluid has found so many applications in diverse fields. Every hard disk that we use today has a little bit of ferrofluid seal. It is a dynamic sealant. It is used in high quality loudspeakers as a heat transfer fluid. It is used in a variety of sensors. It has many biomedical applications. MRI contrast, this fluid is used. It is used in cancer therapy and so many other applications. High sensitivity detection of proteins, this material is used, where the response stimuli nature of these materials in the fluid is exploited. And it is a unique material that has both magnetic and liquid properties, the way you see in this animation. You see, it may be fluid, but with a magnetic field, you can bring it to the place you want, and it can conform any geometry you want, depending upon the kind of magnetic trap you form. So in this fluid, what is used is extremely fine magnetic nanoparticles. So when you talk about magnetic nanoparticle, it can be ferromagnetic or it is ferrimagnetic. So if you take bulk ferromagnetic materials, you see multi-domain structures because that is the energetically favorable situation. So where the domain formation energy is lower than the difference in the magnetostatic energy between a single and a multi-domain. That's the reason why you see this multi-domain structure in bulk or materials with the larger dimensions. But when you reduce the size of this material to very small size, you see the coercive field increases. That is because the domain wall movement becomes difficult, and at one length scale, you would see the coercivity or coercive field become maximum. And beyond that, the energetically favorable situation is to have a single domain, not the multi-domain structure. So it forms a single domain structure. And in the single domain structure, if you reduce the particle size further, you would see that the coercive field is decreasing and it reaches zero at some point. That length scale is called the superparamagnetic length scale. And below this, you wouldn't see much coercivity or remanence in this system. And all these sizes, the single domain size and the superparamagnetic size depends on the anisotropy constant and the saturation magnetization, or the anisotropy constant, or the temperature of the system. So here what happens is, in the superparamagnetic limit, the magnetic moment can be flipped very easily because there is no permanent magnetic moment. So these materials, if you look at in a ferromagnetic material, you see hysteresis lobe like the one which is shown. And in the case of paramagnetic material, you see it is not saturating even at high magnetic field. Whereas in the case of a superparamagnetic material, which can be ferro or ferrimaterials, single domain without coercivity, and resonance. That's what you see. So in the case of a super paramagnetic, we call it because it has a very high saturation magnetization, magnetic moment, or the susceptibility value. This is because the magnetization or the magnetic moment is the sum of the magnetic moment due to all the atoms in a single domain particle. And in this case, you know, the number of atoms in a super paramagnetic material as compared to paramagnetic material is about 3 to 5 orders higher. As a result, it has a macro spin or very high saturation. That's the reason why it is called super paramagnetic. So in the case of paramagnetic or super paramagnetic materials, in the case of iron oxide, for example, the DS single domain size is around 128 nanometer, and the critical size for superparamagnetism is around 20 nanometer. So within the superparamagnetic limit, you would be able to see the huge changes in the magnetic properties and the anisotropy, the shape and magnetocrystal anisotropy. This is essentially because of the surface atomic contributions, which is coming at very small particle sizes. Now, once you produce super paramagnetic material, that is what it is required in to prepare ferrofluids or the magnetic fluids. Now, the question is, can we easily suspend magnetic nanoparticles in a fluid? Yes, obviously, if you produce the particles, you can use an ultrasonic horn or ultrasound vibration or mechanical agitations and dispose this particle. And you see a single phase. That means the particles are well dispersed. But what happens with the time? With the time, typically you try to dispose of particles. Maybe it is very fine size, but over a period of time, you would see a phase separation. That means this is slightly darker, but you can see most of the particles are accumulated at the bottom or sedimented at the bottom. And if you wait sufficiently long time, you would be able to see all the particles are settled at the bottom of the container. So this is the situation you encounter if you try to dispose high density metallic particle. Why this is happening? Of course, this is happening because the sedimentation velocity depends on the balance in the drag force, which is, which depends on the viscosity of the medium essentially, and the gravitational pull, which, which again depends on a few parameters. That's what you see here. If you write down these two forces and balance them, you would get the sedimentation velocity. This is an equation for infinitely dilute concentration where no interparticle interaction is considered. So here you see the sedimentation velocity depends on the density mismatch. Delta rho means the difference in density between the suspended particle and the solvent. So if you want to disperse iron oxide or gold nanoparticle or silver nanoparticle, you don't have much option. They are high density particles. This ratio is very high. So what you can do is, if you use a highly viscous oil, you can delay sedimentation because inverse relationship. But what is easier is to reduce the particle because you have a d squared dispersion. D is the size of the particle. So by reducing the size and playing with the viscosity of the medium, you can control the sedimentation, or you can delay sedimentation velocity to some extent. But besides this sedimentation, you also have issues because of aggregation of particles in the solution. You know that nanomaterials are highly surface active because of large amount of atoms sitting at the surface of this material. So they are highly reactive. This is the property which is exploited for catalysis application, for sensing applications, other things. This is not very useful when it comes to the nanofluid preparation. Because of this reactivity, they aggregate and then form bigger clusters, which are called agglomeration. So this agglomeration again depends on the interparticle interaction, that is the van der Waals interaction between the particle and the solvent medium. When it comes to magnetic materials, you have an additional problem which is coming from the magnetic interaction, because you have a magnetic moment. And you will have a magnetic dipolar interaction, which can lead to, again, magnetic aggregation and agglomeration of the material. So you need to take into consideration of the surface chemistry and size control to produce stable dispersions of the magnetic nanomaterials. So this is a schematic representation of what you see in these three systems. The first system, the particles are well dispersed without any aggregates. That's what it is depicted in this schematic. And this schematic, what I have shown is, some clusters are formed and the cluster size is large. Obviously, they are pulled by the gravitational force. They are at the bottom. That is what you see, but still you see some particle dispersed in the top part. And that is why you see the density gradient here. And in this particular case, what happens, they are all aggregated or agglomerated particles are sedimented at the bottom of the vial. That is what it is shown in this case. So obviously now, if you control the surface chemistry and the size of the material and choose appropriate solvent, you can produce highly stable nanofluids, which can be stable for years. And some of the nanofluids which we have produced in our lab is still active after 2 decades if it is preserved properly in the fridge or without exposure to environmental conditions. It remains stable without any aggregation. So what normally is done is the particles are stabilized with some surface active species. It can be a surfactant molecule, or it can be a polymeric materials, and also you can use a core shell structure. The core can be magnetic and the shell can be inactive. It can be non-magnetic. It should be very thin, because what you're talking about is superparamagnetic size is around 15 or 10 nanometers. So you cannot have very thick shell. The shell should be few nanometers. That's what it is. So in general, what is done is we functionalize or we cap the nanoparticles. After producing this nanoparticle, cap it with a molecule. And ideally speaking, if these molecules form a monolayer around the particle, that's the ideal situation. So in this case, what happens is the molecules adsorbed on the nanoparticle form and provide a steric hindrance and stabilize this particle against aggregation. That is what it is shown here. Because of the sheath around this nanoparticle, they are not sticking together or aggregating. That's the simple terminology. So in the case of magnetic nanoparticles, to suspend, you have to overcome 3 problems. One is the gravitational field is trying to pull all the particles to the bottom of the container. And then second is the magnetic field gradient, because most of the applications you need to use this fluid along with the magnetic field. In some cases, it may be a feeble field. Some cases, you need very high field. And this field gradient, the particles should not come in contact and form aggregates. And obviously, the magnetic agglomeration is because of the dipolar interaction. And you can work out and find the conditions to have stable suspension. And this 3 conditions sets the limit on the size and magnetic properties of the dispersed phase. In the case of iron oxide nanoparticle, the ideal size to have a stable dispersion is around 15 nanometer. This is not the only condition, and then you should have a functional coating on the nanoparticles so that it remains stable. So if you take care of all these things, you see in this video a fluid which is prepared in our lab. You see it is a fluid, it flows, and now I put a magnet, then I am able to invert the vial. The fluid is, able to hold its weight. Now, the moment I remove the magnetic field, it is again a fluid. You see, the fluid is flowing. So it is a completely reversible process. This is what I said. It can change the rheological properties in a significant manner. And this is what it is exploited in some of the applications where, you need, damping. You can use this kind of fluid. And obviously in the automobile and other applications where there is another fluid, which is called magnetorheological fluid, which is suspension of micron-sized particles, which are ferromagnetic, suspended in a highly viscous oil, and that's what it is used in the case of automobile and high-end automobile and aircraft and even bridge structures where the damping or arresting purpose, this magnetorheology. But this fluid is used in miniature devices and systems where you will be able to get something like 3 to 4 order increase in the magnetic properties, which is useful for miniature device. Now, if you don't functionalize this particle properly, what happens is what it is shown. Initially, it is a stable suspension, but when I put the magnetic field on, you can see the fluid is phase separated. After phase separation, what happens is I can shake the vial and redisperse. But again, if you apply magnetic field, what you see is the particles are again getting agglomerated. So in the second movie, what you saw is the same particle, 15 nanometer size particle, not properly functionalized. Because they are not properly functionalized, what is happening is that, when you apply magnetic field, because of the magnetic dipolar interaction, the particles are closer and they aggregate and they phase separate. Once they aggregate and form big clusters, they cannot disperse easily. But in the first movie, you see after removal of the magnetic field, the particles are easily dispersing or de-aggregating in the system. That is because the particles are closer. With the magnetic field, you are able to bring them closer, but they are not sticking together or aggregating because of the organic layer, which is acting like an elastic bumper. That is the reason why it is very stable. And now the second fluid, which I'm going to show you here, is the golden colored one. It's an emulsion. Emulsions are used in pharmaceutical syrups and many other areas. Emulsions are used. They can be oil in water or water in oil. So that means you have an oil droplet disposed in a continuous phase of water. That is what you see. But there is a difference here from the conventional oil in water emulsion. It's not only the oil containing the super paramagnetic nanoparticles. So the same particles which I showed you in the video is incorporated inside this oil globule. So here the advantage is that you can make larger size droplets with this fine nanoparticle. They behave like super paramagnetic droplets. So this is what you see, the distribution of these droplets. When it is placed between two glass slides, you can even use an phase contrast optical microscope, because you know that the limit is the wavelength which is used. So if it is made above 200 nanometer, you will be able to image them. And this is the size distribution of these droplets measured using dynamic light scattering. So in this case, normally what we do is we produce emulsion droplets of size around 200 nanometer and above. And the particles inside this oil droplet is about 10. So it is It's oil in water emulsions, and I will be discussing some of the applications of this emulsion in optical filters, sensors, biomedicine, and it has also application camouflage and display devices. I'm going to discuss them in details. So how these emulsions are produced, first you have to produce this magnetic nanoparticles. You can use top-down or bottom-up approach, and in your department also you are producing magnetic or nanomaterials by different use. You can use any one of these techniques to produce this nanomagnetic materials. You functionalize them and disperse in an oil. It can be octane or kerosene or some of the oil. You can disperse them, and then you put it in a blender and shear the oil droplets, and you end up in a situation like this where you have a polydispersed emulsions with a broad size distribution. And since they are magnetic, because the magnetic grains of different number density are present in different droplets, you can use a technique called fractionation to separate particles of different sizes, where you use or you make use of the attractive entropic forces, which are due to the exclusion of this surfactant micelles, which are in between the interparticle spacing. So by introducing surfactants of different concentration, you would be able to separate the droplets with the different sizes in the system. So the beauty of this emulsion is that, you can manipulate them. You can see them with a phase contrast optical microscope like the one which is shown here. Now, you can also see how these particles or these emulsion droplets are behaving under a magnetic field. So what you need to do here is, here I have made an arrangement, an optical trap, a magnetic trap with the two arms, with the two magnets placed between two arms, and I can control the distance between the arms with a stepper motor control system, so that I will be able to achieve any magnetic field that I need. And then I can see what kind of structures are formed, and use a very high quality CCD detector so that you can image them nicely. That is what you see. You see one video where how these droplets are behaving, and it is captured using this microscope in the laboratory, and the size of the droplets are just above 200 nanometer. I'll show you once again. You see the droplets are under Brownian, and they are not aggregating, and you can see they are under movement because they are placed between two glass slides. Now you see the action of this fluid under the magnetic field. So this is what the emulsion droplets are. You have the nanograins inside the droplets, which are randomly oriented when there is no magnetic field. Now, if you put a magnet across this sample like this, you will see that these droplets are forming one-dimensional array like the one which is shown here. And you can control the aspect ratio. You can form 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can form infinitely long array also by controlling the magnetic field. So when you apply the magnetic field, what is happening here is, initially you have the random orientation of particles inside the oil droplets. But when you apply the magnetic field, you are inducing magnetic moment, and these moments are orienting along the direction of the magnetic field, which leads to this kind of one-dimensional array. And by playing with the concentration of these emulsion droplets, you can form 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional, or 3-dimensional crystals also in the fluid. And a recent study by one of my students, he has demonstrated we can form different kind of structures. I may not be able to show the details, but you would be able to see the publications. So what is happening in this system? You have seen the ordering in the system. This is what the physics is all about. You have the repulsive interaction between this particle, and then you have the attractive contribution which is coming from the van der Waals attraction. That is one contribution. And the second one is the dipolar interaction. The dipolar interaction is long range. It can act even 100 or 150 nanometers when these droplets are apart, which is very strong, which depends on the droplet size, susceptibility, and the applied magnetic field. So you can compute the forces acting between these droplets within the array by summing over the interaction between these particles or the droplets. So when these forces, the repulsive and attractive forces balances, you would be able to see a stable one-dimensional array like the one which is shown here. This is, this is what you can use for various applications where, you want to change. For example, I will be showing the application a little later, and let's see a movie, how this ordering is taking place. What you saw initially is with the magnetic field on. Now I have removed the magnetic field. You can see the droplets are randomly oriented. There is no ordering in the system. The droplets are random. Now I will slowly increase the magnetic field. You can see the droplets are aligning along, and it is forming short chains with the lower aspect ratio. And with increasing magnetic field, you would be able to see larger aspect ratio chains which are formed. And it is a perfectly reversible process. You have seen that I have switched on the magnetic field, it's ordered, and I increase the magnetic field, I form chains with a different aspect ratio. I switch off the magnetic field, it is again random. So you can create this kind of one-dimensional structures or even two-dimensional structures using this kind of emulsion droplets with a different volume fraction or number density. Now, the beauty of this system is that, if you see atomic systems, you can see the Bragg reflection where the periodicity is in angstrom range. As a result, you have to go for a wavelength close to the X-rays. That's why you see the Bragg reflection piece. But in this system, the ordering, the droplet size is around 200 nanometer, and the interparticle spacing, which is of the order of several hundred nanometers. So you would be able to see the Bragg reflection in the visible wavelength. So you can use a spectrograph to look at the interparticle interaction or the spacing between the droplet. That's the beauty. And here you can see how we measure it. This is with a strong magnetic field. You see the Bragg peak. It is broad because of the polydispersity of the system. Now, slowly I remove the magnetic field. Slowly I decrease the magnetic field. You see the Bragg peak is changing towards the lower wavelength, towards the higher wavelength. That means the interparticle spacing is increasing, the magnetic interaction is decreasing. That is what you expect when the particles, the magnetic field is low, the magnetic interaction force is lower, and at some magnetic field, below some magnetic field strength, you see there is no Bragg peak in the system. That means it is completely disordered system. So you can use the spectroscopy to look at the interparticle periodicity. And you can see a movie, how it is controlled with a magnetic field. So you see, with the electromagnet, I have brought this fluid from the bottom to the pole piece area. This was the original idea which Steve Poppel thought of. With a magnetic field, you can control the fluid and, brought this fluid to the pole piece area where the magnetic field is strong. And if I switch off the electromagnetic current, then you see the fluid is at the bottom of the container. So this is the beauty, and this can also be used to create structural colors like butterflies or chameleon, or the kind of colors you see in soft films. So how it is done? You use the magnetic emulsion of suitable sizes and place it in a solenoid coil and change the magnetic field. You see the fluids are changing its color. Now, if I reduce the magnetic field, you can see the color changes disappear, and it is the natural color. So you will be able to generate any colors. You will be able to extract any color from a white light. It is again a perfectly reversible process. That is what I show here by switching on and switching off the magnetic field slowly. So, you know, this color changing property, again, it is selective reflection, can be exploited for various applications. So I don't have much time, so I rush through a few things. No, the beauty of the system is, you know, you can control the scatterer size. This is what these students have shown. You know, you start with the 20 nanometers. So you are in the Rayleigh regime if you use a helium needle laser. And then, you know, you increase the scatterer size by playing with the magnetic field. You can go to my region, and you can even see reach the geometrical region by playing with the simple magnetic field. And you can create all kinds of structures by varying the magnetic interaction to the thermal interaction energy. And obviously the physics is discussed here, how you are acquiring an induced magnetic moment in the system, and it can be attractive or repulsive depending upon the angle between the magnetic moment orientation and the applied magnetic field strength. So beyond a magnetic field strength, this is what it happens. You can have a Schippering transition, and it is forming larger columns. And this is again used to look at the diffraction and scattering processes, and a lot of work is done. And we have used this to, you know, study the onset of one-dimensional and two-dimensional structure formation, their orientation, the diameter of nanostructures, etc., using this kind of techniques. Now, how the transmitted light is varying from a ferrofluid. This is what you see if you send a light beam, and you can see indent scattering which is taking place at some magnetic field strength, and you see a kind of ring-like structure which is formed when these nanostructures are oriented along the direction of the magnetic field. That is what it is. It is shown here. You can see the ring-like structure, and we have done a lot of work, actually 3 PhD theses on this topic on various aspects. This is the manifestation of the one-dimensional nanostructures that are formed in the fluid, and those structures are scattering light. And depending upon the orientation of these nanostructures with the magnetic field or the incident light intensity, this can be a ring-like structure or it can be a straight line structures. That is what I showed in the previous slide. Now, the concept of this one-dimensional array formation is used for ion sensing, which is very important. You know that in body fluids, we need to know the amount of cations, intracellular ions like sodium, potassium, calcium, etc. And also we need to detect the effluent released heavy metal ions in solutions. And we have adopted a simple approach, which is, you know, you create an one-dimensional array with a d-spacing. And then you introduce, you know, the solutions with the different ion concentration and look at how the d-spacing is changing. It is very simple. It's like photonic crystal, but this is a one-dimensional array. It is in solution form, and beyond some concentration, you may be able to see a visible change in the color. If the d-spacing change is very large, you go from green to the orange color. That's the concept which is used. And if you want to detect in ppm level, obviously you need to have a spectrometer, and you have to use a molecular recognition element which is attached to the system. That is what we have shown in all these papers. And what we do here is we just, you know, look at the Bragg peak position at different concentrations of ion, and then you will be able to quantify what is the concentration of ions which are used. And this principle is also used to demonstrate, you know, the glucose sensing property of this nanoemulsions, where this kind of conjugation of the surface active moiety and the glucose molecules takes place, which leads to dramatic change in the Bragg peak formation. And that is what, and Mahendran has demonstrated that, you know, this concept can be used to, you know, detect glucose in solutions, and in obviously we need to check with respect to the blood and urine samples to use this for practical applications. And it can also be used for temperature and pH sensing, where you need to use thermoresponsive polymer or pH responsive polymer, so that this kind of changes, conformational changes that can be manifested from the Bragg peak changes. And we have also used this for detecting defects in material. This is one of our earlier work, where magnetic flux is the technique which is used to detect defects in material. Other than the ultrasonic or radiographic technique, it is one can use Hall probe or the magnetic diode or Search coil magnetic particle. These are the sensors traditionally used. So when we develop this nano emulsions, and we did a calculation to see what is the kind of leakage magnetic flux from the specimen, and we realized that the kind of magnetic flux which lead from the defective region is the order of 50 to 100 Gauss or more, and that can be easily sensed using a magnetic emulsion. That is what it is demonstrated in this patent first, and obviously we have many work, and now we can detect defects of around 50 micron simply by looking at the color changes that are happening in the system. That is essentially, there is a correlation between the defect and the leakage magnetic field. That is what it is mapped with the modeling and the analysis of flux pattern, or the patterns which are observed in the emulsion. It is possible to quantify the severity of the defect and also the location where the defects are worried. And that's the beauty of this particular technique. And of course, we can also use for selective reflection or optical filters and all these applications where the nano emulsion can be used. That is what it is demonstrated in this particular patent. And of course, we are working with many other areas too, the intermolecular force measurement and order disorder transition and conformation changes of polymers and cation detection I've discussed. A lot of work is done on heat transfer. It's a wonderful system for micro electromechanical heat transfer application, computer technology where it can be used. And we are working on dynamic sealant. We have developed it for the reactor, and this kind of sealant will be used in the reactor. Because of technology denial, we were not able to get this. That's why we started, and this is being used now. And these applications have dropped. And we are also working on magnetic hypothermia. We have some collaboration with Kerala University and other institutions in Kerala on the magnetic hypothermia measurement. We have in-house developed a setup with thermal imaging, so we can map the temperature and radio frequency. And this is a technique widely used in MRI. The iron oxide-based nanofluids are used, and people have demonstrated targeted drug delivery, DNA separation, molecular detection, and so on. And the concluding statement is the magnetic nanofluids are a class of smart or stimuli responsive materials. I'm sure you are convinced because it has the capability to change the rheological properties, optical properties, and thermal properties I've not discussed. But all these properties can be varied significantly with a magnetic stimulus. That's why we call it a smart fluid or nanomaterial. And this fluid exhibit interesting optical properties suitable for application in defect detection. I've shown you quickly analyte sensing, different gases, optical limiters, optical filters, and so on. And it's a wonderful model system to probe order disorder transition. I've not talked in length, but I just showed you what you can do with this fluid. And the scattering phenomena, again, you can go from me to, Rayleigh to Mie to the geometrical region, and you can create the structures with simple by tuning the magnetic field. And another important field we have been working is the intermolecular forces to get insight into the kind of interaction between the colloidal particles and solution. So I'd like to thank some of the students who have worked very hard and produced a lot of new results, which I have presented in my talk. And I would also like to thank the funding agencies for early support, which enabled me to set up a good lab and establish facilities to look at thermal, rheological property, force spectroscopy, scattering, different fields. And finally, some of the images are from Google, so I would like to thank Google. And thank you for your attention.